Hello again, Andrew here yet again. Today is episode 129 and we're having another little look at the passage we looked at yesterday. So this is Matthew 17 verses 14 to 21. This is when Jesus comes down with his executive and meets up with all the other disciples and a large crowd that's gathered as they have failed to heal a young boy. So we pick it up in verse 14 of chapter 17 and we'll read the text again. When they came to the crowd, a man came to him, knelt before Jesus and said, "Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is an epileptic and he suffers terribly. He often falls into the fire and often into the water. And I brought him to your disciples, but they could not cure him." Jesus answered, "You faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you? How much longer must I put up with you? Bring him here to me." And Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and the boy was cured instantly. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, "Why could we not cast it out?" He said to them, "Because of your little faith. For truly I tell you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you." Today I'm wanting to pick up on Jesus' reaction to the inability of his disciples to help this unfortunate boy. Jesus is pointing to the size of their faith as the problem. Unfortunately, in their minds, it's not about what God can do, it's about what they can do, and size therefore becomes a problem. They may not have encountered anything quite like this before, and it just seems too big. You see, it's not about God's capacity to heal. It's about their faith in God working through them to heal. I think the reality is that we all face similar issues, and it may not be about believing prayer as we see it here. I'm facing a significant life change at the end of this year. I'll be leaving the parish in which I'll have served for 26 years and setting out on a bit of a 2-year adventure with the Methodist Church in a new role that they have for me. While I can look back and see that in some ways, in many ways perhaps, the Lord has been preparing me for this, and although I not have chosen it, I can see that it seems to be in the Lord's purpose for my life, yet I remain anxious about what the future might look like. This passage is an invitation to trust that it's about what God is doing rather than about what I'm doing. And if you've listened to me before, you'll recognise that what I'm doing actually features quite a bit up there. And my role is twofold, not in the future, but just in what I'm saying here. It's to notice what God is doing and to cooperate, or at least not to get in the way. I've never been one for planning ahead that much. I've been thinking about this, and I'm a Boy Scout. I may not plan, but I do prepare. I like to be prepared for whatever happens. When I go on holiday, I pack the car with tools that will help me with any possible emergency that I might have the capacity to meet. And I might have tools to meet emergencies that others would know what to do where I wouldn't. I've been thinking about this. In a meeting with some friends yesterday, it was a Zoom conversation, I suggested to them that when I see a light at the end of the tunnel, I don't automatically assume it's daylight. My default position, my default setting is to assume that it's an oncoming train. I think that's pretty it. It's the way I am. It seems to be the way that I'm wired. So I don't tend to plan so much as to prepare. Even as I'm prepare for preaching. It's I don't tend to have a plan. It's interesting as I just reflecting on that and looking back on my life. Yet I've been invited to trust that it's not all about the preparations that I make. This is about what God is doing, what God is equipping me for, and for what God is looking for in me. That will be different from what He'd look for in others, because I am different. We're all different. And so God wants to use the gifts and the graces and the particular mix of strengths and weaknesses that we each have. Even our weaknesses God can use, and God does use, and God delights to use. And see, I'm being invited to trust God. I don't necessarily find that easy. That God has it all in hand. And although I might not feel capable, God is. As we've seen in other places, this is not about what I can do. It's about what God is doing. And we're so often intimidated by the size of the task, as if the size somehow matters. Now, I think it's a wonderful scene in The Empire Strikes Back. I mentioned this the other day. The second of this original Star Wars trilogy. Luke Skywalker, as I said the other day, is being trained by Yoda to access the power of the Force. Please bear with me if this is not your thing. He's trying to will a small rock to rise off a larger rock, and he gets it to wobble a little bit. He complains that it's too big. It's only about that big. It's a small rock. He complains it's too big. Yoda closes his eyes. And the next we see Luke's spacecraft rise out of the swamp into which he crashed it and move across and settle on dry land. Yoda comments that size is irrelevant. Size is not the issue. Because if it's a small thing, we might be tempted to say, it's okay, Lord, I've got this. We fail to recognize that large or small, it's all about what He's doing. It's about what God is doing. The invitation, the task for us is to tap into what God's doing and to simply cooperate, no matter how big or how small the challenge we might be facing. God bless you.